Hi, everybody. We are really excited to be here. We are Allison and Tanya. We are two R data scientists who have recently walked into a JavaScript bar.
Allison, I don't know about you, but I brought tea to this bar today because I'm feeling a little under the weather, but I'm very excited. Oh, look at that. Cheers.
I brought a mug. I won't share what's in it. Just kidding. It's coffee. All right, so we are really excited for this conversation as a couple of people who have spent time as data scientists ourselves, which we will share in a minute. We're really excited for this conversation, especially because we know that so many people on this call are data scientists or data analysts who maybe work primarily in a language that is not JavaScript. And we're excited to share our experience, how we got into JavaScript, what we think good entryways are, and then some questions that we hope y'all will participate in with us. So like Hannah said, there are as many perspectives on getting from like data science in R or Python or other language into JavaScript as there are data scientists in the world. So we're super excited to hear your perspectives. We're going to be sharing ours, but please share your experiences in the chat. We'll be really excited to hear some of your responses as well. So we'll go ahead and jump in to a little bit about us. This will be a real quick part. I'm Allison. I spent a decade from about 2012 to 2022 teaching data science at UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos. I taught stats, data analysis, and environmental data science in a graduate program there, and worked almost entirely in R with a really heavy stats background. But at the same time, got involved with our communities, some of you, which might also be part of those data science communities, and spent about 6 years. The last 6 years, I've also been working on data science illustrations for art and education and community building, including as our studio now posits first artist in residence. And since August 2022 until today, I have been at Observable, first as a data scientist advocate and currently as a developer marketing manager, working with Hannah and the rest of our marketing team. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll pass it to Tanya for an intro.
Thank you, Allison, and welcome all today. A little quick intro about me. So I started off my career working in the property and casualty insurance industry as an analyst. I'd say the core tools that you pick up, especially for me as an analyst, was SQL and Excel. I still have a little bit of love-hate going on with Excel today, but so it is. And then for that time period, I worked a lot in a startup environment where I wore many hats. You know, one day I was an analyst, sometimes I was engineering, sometimes I was even a product manager. So I learned a lot on the fly. And then on the side, I continued to upskill and pick up other tools like R and Python, which really helped elevate my workflows as an analyst. And I'd say I almost picked up R for fun because I found communities online like Tidy Tuesday that made it really engaging and fun to meet new people. I also did some more traditional learning, like participating in a data science bootcamp for Python. Fun fact, Allison, your data science illustrations were actually in my course notes. So that was maybe the first way that I found out about Allison Horst was through my bootcamp, and I continue to geek out about your work today. And I'd say the learning journey is continuous for me even now. It doesn't stop. I'm still learning new tools. I started with JavaScript about 2.5 years ago, and I'm still learning new things today. And I apply it in my role as an independent consultant now, where I get to work with people in many different industries working on different data problems.
All right, so now we're going to jump into our discussion of a couple of topics that we picked beforehand. And again, please share your experiences in the chat as we're sharing ours. So the first question that we decided to talk about is, why did we decide to learn JavaScript? As a couple of folks who were like arguably doing pretty well using R and some other tools for data science, why did we decide to add this to our toolkit? So Tanya, do you want to start with this one?
I actually want you to start with this one first because I feel like you jumped into the JavaScript pool before I did, so I'm really curious to find out how you started.
Yeah, they might be similar based on conversations that we've had. I think first, like I always had this perspective that like if the tool that you're using lets you do all the stuff that you want to do, then it's an awesome tool. And whatever that is, if that's Excel or anything else, then awesome. Um, but what I found was that I had been working in Excel till like 2010, and then got into R for data science, and spent then the decade building and totally in love with ggplot2, which is still near and dear to my heart, and I think it's an awesome language, or an awesome library for data visualization in R. But kept finding a couple things. One, like I would get to a point where I wanted to do a little bit more complex visualization or add interactivity or add animation. And there was a lot of libraries that could help me do that. But I always felt like I was kind of Frankensteining some things together. I actually drew a little Frankenstein to remind myself. I drew a little Frankenstein together like these tools in different libraries, and it felt like I was like trying to piece things together in a way that didn't feel necessarily always so cohesive. And the other thing is that I started noticing in all of my repos, like I'm an R user, and then looking at my repos where it's like, this is 76% JavaScript. And I was like, this is disconcerting because I do not write any code in JavaScript. But still was happy working, that way for many years, until I was like, I'm kind of hitting a wall in terms of the customization that I want to do. And JavaScript was the thing to learn at that point, that like to create the visualizations that I want to move on to, then I need to add this to my toolkit. And it's worth learning what's under the hood to just write in that language that I'm using, but using wrappers. So that was really my motivation for learning JavaScript.
And that resonates a lot with my entry point into it and my motivation. I feel like I hit a wall trying to do some web app development that I was used to doing in R. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot that you can do with R and the different libraries and frameworks that exist within R. But at some point, you hit this wall where you're like, oh, I'm dealing with an R library that's actually a JavaScript wrapper. And if I want to do something really bespoke, I should probably learn some JavaScript. And I have to give you credit in all of this because I distinctly remember our conversation about 2 years ago where I shared this frustration and you're like, JavaScript is fine, like jump in the water. It's not that bad. And I thought, okay, well, if Allison is doing it, then I'll give it a shot. So definitely helps to have friends motivate you.
Yeah, and we want you all and your data science friends to join us in the pool or at the bar too. Um, so yeah, I think like that shared experience of like kind of hitting a wall, knowing that to do more customization, we wanted to experience more. Yeah, it's good to see. It looks like there's some folks in the chat who maybe had a similar experience. So I think like learning, everybody has a different learning path, and sometimes that's project based, sometimes you just pick a tool, sometimes you read a book, sometimes you tell yourself you're going to read a book, so you buy 10 books and then they sit on your shelf, and really the way you learn things is just by breaking stuff all day. But we wanted to talk a bit about, now that we've kind of gone through a couple years of getting into JavaScript, particularly for data visualization, what do we think some good entryways are? All right, I went first on the last one, so I'm gonna tap you for leading this one off, Tanya.
All right. I mean, I'm definitely fall into the camp of I want to experiment and break things instead of read things. So for me, it was really convenient to jump into observable notebooks because I remember like the big barrier for me was where do I even start? To start, I need to figure out what the heck is Node.js, what are the IDEs. It was a lot of like unfamiliar stuff, and I thought it was a little bit scary and overwhelming to begin. So the idea of having observable notebooks be like this lab where I could experiment and not worry about the installation was a great starting point for me. And I think the thing that really sold it for me is that I found community. And I always suggest when you're starting anything new, it's so important to find mentorship, friends, community, people that you can brainstorm with while you're picking up something. Because I really think it gives you the chance to accelerate at a pace that you couldn't on your own. So I think definitely find something that resonates with you, find how you can experiment and play around with new things, and don't be scared to reach out to people who know how to do those things. You might even make some new friends along the way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember thinking about starting in JavaScript and being like, this is for web developers and software engineers. And that is absolutely not me. And then I would try to start. And then the first thing I see would be like, promise, await. And then it'd be like, I told you this was not for me. So I think like working in notebooks was this really great way where there was no installation. I got to focus on the code and really quickly build things. I do also think another thing that's been awesome, Michael left a comment here that is learning by breaking stuff is great as long as you follow it up with finding out how to fix them. I still have broken notebooks places, but that's been was another great thing about starting in notebooks is that sometimes I would get frustrated and something wouldn't be working, and either I could easily ask somebody for help, or sometimes like a magical code angel like Michael or Phil would like show up in my public notebook and be like, here's the way. It feels like this totally magical experience of like having people who are so excited to help you, which is really awesome. So for me, I think my best entryway into JavaScript, like without a doubt, was Observable Plot. Um, so Plot, if you're not familiar with Observable Plot, it's an open source JavaScript library for data visualization. Get some Phil love in the chat. Love it. It's built on D3, but adds a layer of abstraction so you can get started like a little bit closer to building quick exploratory charts instead of building straight from scratch. And Plot was a great entryway for me because it's built on the grammar of graphics and is really, really similar in patterns and grammar as other tools that I had been using like ggplot. So I did just want to show one example for people who might be on this call, or showing people that they're working with who are working in ggplot or plot9 or other visualization grammars, that while there might be some like syntax differences or naming differences, the overall patterns are like really familiar feeling. So on the left here is ggplot, on the right is Observable Plot to do the same thing. These each make a simple scatter plot with the really inspiring cars data set that a lot of you are probably familiar with. But you see the patterns are the same. In orange, you initialize the plot, then you specify the mark, and then you say what data you're using, and then you map your variables to the X and Y axis scales. And this, you can go down the line. We've got some resources. I think Tanya just shared one. But really, it's a familiar feeling library, even if you are currently working in R or other great grammar-based visualization tools. For me, that was like, I was like, I can do it. Like the combination of notebooks, community, and Observable Plot to give me like early wins to get and stay motivated was totally essential to me, like really wanting to continue with my learning journey. And I think they're the best two entryways to get into JavaScript for people who want to move into JavaScript for data visualization particularly.
Can I just say how lucky the JavaScript community is to have you now creating such awesome learning resources? Because I remember like your learning resources for R were, I mean, still are amazing. And then all of a sudden finding all of these notebooks, even Matt just
Can people still hear me? Tanya, can you hear me? You cut out for a second. You can hear me? Okay. All right. Well, I missed that last part of you saying how awesome I was, so I'll have to ask you to say it again later, but thanks. All right. Did the audio cut? Okay. Hopefully we're back. All right. Tanya might be having a little bit of audio issues, but hopefully, Tanya, feel free to chime in to do an audio test anytime.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There. All right. We got Tanya back. Excellent.
Great.
Okay. Okay. I love these comments in the chat too. Felt like angel moments from the community helping out, which is really awesome. Okay, so we want to move on to our next question, which is about picking the right tool for the job. So, and actually, I saw a question earlier in the chat about like Corto and people who are using, other tools for their data science work. And if you add JavaScript, right, or if you add any other tools to your data science toolkit, then you have more options, but having more options sometimes makes it hard to decide like when and how you use and combine those tools. So our next topic is how you pick the right tool for the job. And I guess just as I'll lead this one off, Tanya, and then hand it quickly off to you, and then we can chat about it. But I'll return to what I said early on, that like the greatest tool for the job is whichever one lets you do the job that you need to do. And sometimes it's really helpful to use things in combination. So like for example, like if I have to do data wrangling, stats, or modeling, like I'm still doing that work in R. Like every day, all the time, that's what I'm picking. For a long time, I was like, that's just because R is better for these things, or Python is better than these things. It turns out like I'm just not good at it in JavaScript, because when I see people who are really fluent in JavaScript, I'm like, oh, that's another beautiful way to do this that, didn't take you any longer than I did. But part of it is just personal preference and comfort, right? So like I am comforted by dplyr, and that's where I'm happiest. And I feel totally happy working in like tidy tools for modeling. But at the same time, like again, I really, really like especially observable plot for exploratory data visualization, or like building on that to make really customized bespoke data visualization. And I'm really excited that more and more the barriers between integrating tools is getting broken down. So maybe I'll pass it off to you, Tanya, for picking the right tool for the job, and maybe some polyglot conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's always starting off with the problem before the tool, right? What am I trying to solve? What am I trying to do? And usually within my stack of tools, as a data kind of jack of all trades, there's some type of data wrangling, data cleaning that has to happen. And then usually in my line of work, it's a lot of data visualization. And then maybe even some deployment into an app and productionalizing it. So with data wrangling, I'm still biased. There's a lot of stuff in R that I still lean heavily on. I don't think my love for dplyr is going away anytime soon. But that being said, there's something to be said about developing comfort with other tools outside of the ones you already know. And as I've kind of grown into becoming more of a job, did I lose Allison? Allison's back. If it's not me, it's you. There's other tools within JavaScript that I'm starting to lean on for data wrangling. Arcaro being one of them. A lot of similarities with dplyr. And what I really love is actually the DuckDB integration of going back to my first love with using SQL, and then being able to use that in parallel with JavaScript. So I would say it's kind of a twofold thing. One is figuring out the right tool for the right job, and then figuring out how that works within the context of a workflow. And I think the future looks really bright for us polyglots looking for polyglot workflow enablers. I mean, I haven't dug too deep into it yet. I don't know if you have, Allison. WebAssembly, WebR, I see that being really hot in the future of how we can integrate that with JavaScript workflows. I know there's some notebooks already out there that you can integrate a little bit of R and JavaScript too. So it's really exciting to see what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Observable Framework at this point, because I felt such relief when I could like work in a files-based workflow with like Git, the kind of like using a data science workflow that I was used to, and still doing all of my data processing, analysis, modeling in R, and then have that seamlessly connect to the data visualizations that I was creating and actually make them faster. So I think any tools that help with that integration, that let people, you know, merge the skills that they've built and merge the tools that they love to use like the best tool for the right job for you, is really powerful. And I'm also super excited to see how far that goes in the future. I do have to say, Pablo made a great comment about eloquent JavaScript. Just seconding that, I have not one copy, but 2 copies on accident. So maybe if somebody is really excited, I've been thinking I should just mail one to somebody who needs it. But yes, +1, an excellent book. Even for people coming from R, I thought that was a totally approachable book. So thanks, Pablo, for highlighting that one. All right, so next we wanted to do a fun section with what we're calling rapid fire questions. We could talk about, I think, any of these for an hour, so we're trying to keep our answers really short, but we also want to hear what your responses are to some of these rapid fire questions. So please add your perspectives or thoughts or your choices in the chat. All right, Tanya, you ready for a rapid fire question section?
Bring it on. For anybody tuning in, this whole talk is unscripted, so I'm just as excited to hear Allison's answers to these as you are. But yeah, let's fire away.
All right.
All right, Allison, first on deck, you have to choose one case for the rest of time. Is it going to be camel case or snake case?
This really like touches on an identity crisis that I have that's ongoing, where still, like, if I'm working in R, I only use snake case, and if I am like working in JavaScript, it's all camel case, and I wonder if ever the two shall meet. If I had to pick one at this moment, and knowing that I'm happy with both, I would say camel case. I don't know why. Maybe I'm in this moment where I'm like, the cool kids are using it, but I like the look of it and the readability of it. But I think they are both great, and I have a deep love for snake case too. Lot of snake case. Yeah, Python and R users, I think that's the go-to. All right, Tanya, you ready?
All right.
Okay. Thanks for responding, people. This is fun. Keep it coming. All right. So to dominate a fantasy league, are you crunching stats in R or building a live tracker with JavaScript?
Ooh, this is a good one. I'm going to be biased here, and there's an awesome library in R called NFL Faster, created by this whole team of NFL-verse data geeks, and it has amazing play-by-play data sets, and it would be really cool to play around with to create some predictive models. So I've got to go with R on this one.
All right. Okay. Next. Oh, the next one's for me.
All right. By the way, there's still a hot, contentious snake case, camel case thing going on in the chat. I think some people are a little confused why we didn't include Pascal case or kebab case, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, or screaming snake. Michael coming in hot with screaming snake. That is the answer to all of our questions.
So you have to teach a beginner data viz class in under an hour. What are you going to go with? ggplot or observable plot?
All right. So in 30 seconds, some teaching philosophy. I think in 1 hour of anything, the only thing you should try to do is make somebody really fired up about something so they want to learn more. And for me, that means getting rid of any like setup, infrastructure, and just getting to the coolest, most fun things as fast as possible. And I think that's observable plot in a notebook, add an input, let people go, wow. I think if I had an hour, that would be my choice. And again, love ggplot too, and totally transferable, so you can't lose.
I mean, technically in my world, they're cousins. It's grammar of graphics. It's win-win. So
yep, absolutely win-win. So many good so many good case conversations still happening. All right. Next question for Tanya and group. If R and JavaScript were superheroes, what would their superpowers be and who would win in the crossover battle?
All right. Wow, this one's a tough one. I think for references and sake of time, I'm just going to go with like traditional Marvel DC type characters to distill it. If we had to do it solely based on vibes, and I'm going Marvel universe here, I would have to say R is Bruce Banner, the Hulk, like the nerdy scientist type, like traditional sciencey type of dude. And then I'd say JavaScript is giving me more of like a Tony Stark vibe, a little bit more flashy, also sciencey, but definitely more on the flashy side. If we're going super abilities, maybe R is a little bit more like Batman, like analytical, is using kind of practical things to make sense of the world. And then superpower wise for JavaScript, maybe it's Scarlet Witch, because she's got this ability to like bend reality in a different way. So yeah, I've got two different sets of answers, but I'm curious what other people might think in the chat of who they would compare it to.
It's so funny that you said Tony Stark because I thought Doctor Strange for kind of the same reason. Like a little flashy, still sciencey, awesome, a little bit more of an attitude versus just like, yeah, I like the Bruce Banner of just like the get work done Hulk approach to data science, which I love. All right. Next one's for me.
All right, so you're stuck on a desert island with only a laptop and maybe some Wi-Fi, TBD. Do you pick R or JavaScript to analyze your chances of survival?
This one is R for me. Anything where I'm like stats modeling, like those tools exist in JavaScript. This just comes down to like a comfort and quickness level and considering like battery life and how long I have to learn how to figure out how to do some of this stuff. I think R has some good tools for like quick analysis, exploration, modeling, get some answers, figure out if I'm going to make it or not. So yeah, I think R if I had to analyze chances of survival.
I mean, I hope if you have a laptop, you're paying someone to get you some food or like maybe hail a boat while you're at it. But yeah, I think chances
If
of
that's
survival with R programming is also a top-notch answer.
was that an option? All right. So last rapid fire question for Tanya. If your future boss asks you to summarize the company's data in one language, which would you pick, R or JavaScript?
All right, I want to cheat on this one. So it
Cheat.
depends. I feel like most data scientists always say it depends. So I'm gonna use that answer here. If I'm using it to do some quick insights on a lot of data, I think my comfort is still with R. But if I really want to impress the boss and it's a presentation, I want to create something flashy, I'm going to use something more interactive like Observable Plot and interactive notebook to really show the data off. So maybe best of both worlds, but yeah, it really depends. And I see great use cases for both.
I think that's a totally great cheat to end our rapid fire on is like we're both proponents of use all the tools that you love to do the work that you need to do to create the things that you want to create. And the better that they can work together, that's even more awesome. So, yeah, use both, use all of them. All right, we wanted to end on one last note from each of us, which is what would you what will we tell ourselves about getting started in JavaScript? Because I know there's some like intimidation about who is it for. I would say that if you're a data scientist and you're intimidated by JavaScript because you see the value but think it's for people who have like software engineering backgrounds or like really rigorous web development backgrounds, that you absolutely can use it to create visualizations. There are ways to get started in notebooks and framework that let you integrate it with the tools you're already using. And especially if you've been creating visualizations with other grammar or graphics based tools, then those skills will absolutely translate over into getting started quickly in JavaScript for big early wins. So I would say jump in and break stuff and then fix it. All right, Tanya.
Plus one on your answer, and I would add, if I'm going back in time and telling myself what I would do differently or how to start, I would say start small. Sometimes I get overly ambitious with the problems I want to start, and I got to remind myself learning something new is like crawling, even when you want to run. So be comfortable with that. Pick a fun data set to play around with, and just enjoy learning. It's all part of the process. So
Absolutely. And learn together, as me and Tanya both practice. All right, that gets us to our time. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining in the chat. It was really fun to see your responses. If you can't tell from the last 30 minutes, Tanya and I both love talking about data visualization, data science, tools, community. So please reach out to us. You can find us on social media. We've added our emails and our websites here because we really love chatting with people, especially about getting started so you can start creating more awesome data visualizations and adding more tools to your toolkit. All right. Thank you so much, Tanya.